All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's get straight into it.
And I wish it was under better circumstances. Normally, I'd say I'm excited to be here with you, but this is a very interesting turn of events. And tonight we're here with an emergency broadcast, a special Saturday episode here on the weekend to discuss the historic world-changing events of last night. I'm sure, as you all know, we are now living in a new world. As Oliver Anthony would say, we are living in a new world. Last night, the United States and Israel launched a joint attack against Iran. And make no mistake about it, this should be made unequivocally clear right now. This is a regime change war. That is what the president said. That is what it is. And so the reason I say this is because last year, when Israel and the United States engaged Iran for the first time directly, as they did in Operation Midnight Hammer and the so-called 12-day war in June of 2025, it was contentious whether we called this a war because of the end game, because of the mode of attack. But what should be made clear is that we are now engaged against the Islamic Republic of Iran in a full-fledged regime change effort. And this
is not like, oh, we want the people to rise up. That's not what's going to happen here. The only way you're going to actually have Iran's regime changed is by boots on the ground. That's the only realistic. Like, anything else is just, you're in la la land.
This is ours. We bought this. We're in it. This is our country now. This is the world. So tonight, we're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into what is happening in Iran. We're going to talk about the attack. We'll talk about the prelude to it. We'll talk about the actual operation. We're going to talk about Iran's counterattack, which seems to be mostly ineffective. And contrary to a lot of the hype from Iran itself and some of Iran's biggest defenders in the United States, there is not any meaningful pushback that has materialized. Just isn't there. Not from them, not from the axis of resistance. But we'll talk a little bit about their strategy. We're going to talk about the day after. It has been reported by the New York Times that this is expected to be a 4-day operation. That is a report from the media, so that's not 100%. The media is telling us that this will last for a little bit more than half of a week. However, the Trump administration says we are going to keep going. And it might be less than that, it might be more than that, but it depends on the outcome and it depends on the effect that it has on the Iranian regime. We're going to talk tonight about what happens the day after. When this operation concludes, what exactly is the outcome here? And we are being told, according to the president's statement last night, that the goal is to liberate the Iranians.
God, if you believe that one, dude, just throw yourself in, for a loop. You're absolutely just conked in the head if you believe we're doing this for democracy and freedom. Yeah, totally. What, we're going to install the monarchy, the princeling, the exiled princeling is who we're going to install as a monarchy for democracy? That's insane.
Or have we heard this before? Very fresh concept. We will be greeted as liberators. You could call this Operation Iranian Freedom. And we are there to liberate them from tyranny by destroying their regime and leaving. And as history has shown in the Middle East, this always works. It always works, bombing and deposing an oppressive tyrant, and then either staying or leaving. It's always as easy to do as it is to say, and there's never any fallout, never any unintended consequences. So we'll talk a little bit about what the end game is there for the Trump administration, what the plan is, if there is any, and what the prospects are for who will control Iran in the future. And that'll be our show. I'm going to lay it all out, and we'll try to unravel what exactly is happening here and where we're going. So that's going to be our show. Very excited to get into all of this with you. Before we get into the show, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the show. You can post your apology forms, or you can tell me how grateful you are for the show, for the predictions. You're welcome.
Feeling very vindicated, feeling very well in my knowledge and my foreseeableness, how I can see the future, No, definitely people have been saying to me all day, like, oh yeah, you've been, I should have, been listening to you. Yeah, I've been ranting. This is why I didn't go live like last night when it happened. I saw so many people engagement farming off of this, and I'm like, dude, I've been talking about this for so long. I was talking about it like the night before. So I just seen all these people go live. I was thinking about going live, but I got to do all these re-uploads, all the censored words, and let the the first day play out is how I look at it. So people are really cheering this war on. Take note of who is cheering this war on.
But be sure to leave a comment, smash the like button, subscribe. Check out our merch store, Fuentes.store, and subscribe to our brand new subscriber website, AmericaFirst.plus. We have our actually new and improved website, downloadable MP3s and RSS feed of the show. We actually have 5 episodes of the show free on the website with a very good video player. People say it's better than Rumble. So check that out too, AmericaFirst.plus. $100 a month, you get to be in a group chat with me. And we'll shill a little bit, but not too much, because it's a very serious occasion. Now, before we get into all of the news, before we get into the actual strikes and how this is playing out and where all of this is going, I have one thing to say to all of you, to all of the Trump supporters, to all of the Trump voters, to the plan trusters, to the Shabbos goys out there. I really just have one thing to say to all of you, which is, I told you so. I told you so. They said I was crazy.
Looking at you, Dave Smith. Dave Smith, bro, you shilled so hard for Trump, yet you talked incessantly about how a war with Iran is coming, how it was bringing us into a war with Iran. Donald Trump explicitly campaigned on having a confrontation with Iran, was saying, like, Donald Trump campaigned, and he was pretty consistent for a very long time saying Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Yet Dave and a bunch of other people got up there and said, nah, guys, it's like, the Democrats are going to be like the end of civilization, right? Lesser of two evils voting for Trump, right? That was the pitch.
When I predicted this 2 years ago, in 2024, I told you this is exactly what would happen. I have been saying it for years. I was laughed at. I was attacked. They called me crazy. Well, sometimes Chicken Little knows what he's talking about. And I told you so. I said a vote for Trump is a vote for a war with Iran. And I tried. You know that. I really did. I went out there in August of 2024, and I actually made the demand on Truth Social and on Twitter. I rallied my audience, my followers, and the call to action was clear. I said, we cannot, should not vote for Trump unless he commits not to bring us to war in Iran. So I took a lot of flack for not voting. I took a lot of flack. People said I flirted with supporting Kamala or the Democrats, or supporting them or voting them, that I had flipped, that I was in league with Joe Biden or something like that.
It's always so funny. The lesser of two evils thing is just the rod of politics, bro. That's how you know somebody's a total NPC, is when they say to you, oh, well, you're not voting. That means you're voting for the other side because you're not voting for my guy. It's like, no, I'm not voting. That's actually what I'm doing. I'm not voting. I'm not voting for your opponent. I'm not voting for your guy or gal. I'm just not voting. That doesn't mean, oh, like my absence of vote is not like I'm not casting a vote for the other side. Your candidate didn't convince me enough.
But I made it very clear in August 2024. I said I am willing to vote for Trump. As a matter of fact, I'd like to vote for Trump. I said, but I won't do it unless he makes a commitment not to bring us to war. And he didn't do that, and he couldn't do that because that was always part of the plan. Trump's ascendancy from the very beginning, and when I say the beginning, I mean 2016, it was always part of this plan. This plan by made decades ago, perhaps centuries ago, to terraform the Middle East and make it a place that is not safe for it, but make it a place that submits to it. This is about regional hegemony for that country. And they have used Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and the MAGA movement as a Trojan horse for that agenda from the beginning. It was Trump that withdrew the United States from the original Iranian nuclear deal. It was Trump who assassinated Qasem Soleimani. It was Trump that bombed Fordo, Esfahan, and Natanz last year. And now it is Trump that is delivering what it has always wanted, what they have wanted this entire century for the past 25 years, what they have tried to pressure every U.S. president since George W. Bush to do, and that is to once and for all confront and topple the Iranian regime, eliminating the last of Israel's rivals and giving them free reign over one of the most important and consequential regions in the world, and that is the Middle East.
It'll go down as one of the worst strategic decisions in the history of civilizations. Like, when we look back at it, we're going to go, wow, that'll be like on par with a lot of bad decisions. It'll be like, launching a invasion of the Soviet Union. It'll be, there's a bunch of comparisons you can make. Now, I'm not saying morally it's the same, but on a strategic level, this is a total blunder for the fact that you are elevating to a regional power and arguably a superpower in the future. If it has 300 nuclear weapons, basically, if they own the Middle East, they control all of that, monopolize that whole region, and are a superpower economically. And you are a nuclear state, you cannot be stopped. And then America will not have a say in being able to tell what to do whatsoever.
That is the heart of the Rimland. And Trump has done it, and he was always a part of that. So I do just want to get that out of the way because I think it's a little bit deserved. I told you so. I told you it happened like this. They said broken clock is right twice a day. Well, maybe I'm just a regular clock now because I think I know what time it is. Little bit better than anybody else. So now that I've gotten that out of my system here, we can talk a little bit about the conflict. And I'll start with, let's talk about what is happening. Let's talk about what happened last night. We'll talk about what is ongoing. And then I want to rewind a little bit and talk about how we got here, because that is actually the real story. The real story is the process. It is the long march to this war, which, as I said, has gone on for decades between administrations. In the Trump administration the first time, back the second time. We really need to talk about how we arrived here. And partially why I remind people that I'm vindicated on this subject is because this is called establishing credibility. How did I predict that this would play out with precision, with accuracy? How was I able to call the really going back to October 7th, but even through the election and recognizing Trump's role, through to the operation last year, and then predicting it would continue shortly thereafter? It is because I understand how this works. So it's not just for my own self-aggrandizement. It's not just for my own edification that I say this. Here's the point. Why was I able to predict that Trump would bring us to war in Iran and Trump voters did not? Because Trump voters are part of the scam. They are suckers. They were tricked because they listen far too much to what is said online by influencers, which is effectively a form of soft lobbying. If you didn't see this coming, if you underestimated the possibility or the inevitability that this would happen, it is probably because your information diet, the opinion makers that you follow, this is an artifice which is put in front of you by special interest groups.
Absolutely. These are not normal people. It's like somebody that tweets all day long. Why? Like, who has the time to tweet all day long? Well, if you're getting paid, if you're making content, well, you're getting paid. It's like, I was talking about that guy, Ryan Chapman, the other day. He makes really, really good historical videos, videos explaining the origins of various political ideologies, stuff like that. He is a liberal, but it's good, right? But he put out a video literally probably like 6 hours before the strikes on Iran. And the whole video was just justifying why it would be a good thing for the Iranian people, why, if we overthrew the regime there, why the regime is so horrible, why, here's all these unsourced reasons, right? I'm talking to all these anonymous sources in Iran. You know what I mean? It's like, there's no way to verify any of this information that he's putting out in his video. And there's so many people doing that yesterday, or I should say yesterday, right before the strikes, people were putting out propaganda like that,
Why was this not on your radar? Why did you underestimate the likelihood this would happen? It's because probably your timeline has been curated by an algorithm to show you a very particular perspective, a very particular frame of the Trump administration. And that frame is a scam. It is wrong. The reason I called it right is because I didn't follow Trump's speeches and his influencers and his cadre of soft lobbyists on social media. I followed the money. I followed the institutional capture. I followed those associations, which are defining. And if you looked very closely at those things on a very specific timeline, it should have been obvious that this was inexorable. It wasn't going to go any other way. But like I said, more on that in a moment. We're going to start by talking about what happened last night. So last night, I believe it was a little after midnight Central Time, so it was maybe 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Eastern Time, the U.S. and Israel launched a joint strike on Iran. And many people saw this coming. It was pretty clear. Based on the military buildup in the Middle East, the deployment of 2 aircraft carriers, the USS Gerald Ford and the Abraham Lincoln, over a dozen destroyers, you had 50% of the U.S. deployable air power in the Middle East at the time that the conflict broke out. In addition, the United States and Israel had made steps to bolster their defenses. They deployed missile defense systems like Patriot missile batteries and THAAD systems. The U.S. moved its troops out of harm's way.
I think I saw a breakdown where there's the cost of the munitions being used, and people were pointing out that and the average cost for one of these Iranian drones, I believe they're Shahed drones, is like $10,000. If you're spending $10 million on or whatever the price is for one of these Patriot missiles, just think about the cost, right? It's a lot of money per missile versus these drones that cost basically nothing in comparison.
Called on diplomatic personnel at embassies to evacuate, open bomb shelters. So it was very clear, as you know, that since those protests in January, about a month and a half ago, when the United States moved to deploy all this military power in the region, that we were moving towards war. And last night, we finally got it. And so the U.S. and launched, I believe now the tally is over 1,000 airstrikes on Iran. It appears that the U.S. and have suffered no casualties. They have complete air superiority over the western half of the country. They claim they will have air superiority over the rest of the country within 24 hours. The U.S. and targeted regime targets, so centers of government, command and control, military leadership, fortified bunkers. They also targeted nuclear sites. And that's not just Fordo, Esfahan, and Natanz, which is where they enrich the uranium, but also Bushehr, where Iran operates a Russian-provided nuclear power plant. And lastly, they targeted, and this is the big one, regime military assets.
So like targeting a civilian power plant, that is literally what the West accused Russia of doing. Now, I'm no Russia simp whatsoever, but isn't that crazy ironic that the West was going up in flames, talking about, oh, there's going to be a nuclear accident in Ukraine because Russia struck a nuclear power plant with some drones. The nuclear power plant did have soldiers in it. And now we're striking nuclear power plants in Iran, just not caring at all, not giving a whether or not there's radiation all that goes all over the area, poisons people, gives people cancer.
Oh, missile launch platforms, they're missile manufacturing cities where they actually have underground an entire city to build their missiles. The U.S. targeted their Navy, targeted their defense ministry, their intelligence ministry, the executive function of the military, and all the hardware. Very shortly after the strikes began, and rumors surfaced of this on social media, video was posted, the president made a statement. And I have to tell you, this was the most disturbing, surreal thing I think I've witnessed maybe since the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I gotta say, the speech was Trump's worst speech ever. It just dripped with evil, malevolence. They're ominous vibes. He was wearing the USA hat, the white USA hat, so you can barely, with the brim covering like his eyes, so you can barely see his face, really. The setting was just grim. It felt like where are we? It's like, even when Obama and Bush announced that we were going to war, or Biden, they would do it in like the White House, like front lawn, or in the, the big like front door of the White House, and be like, at least we'll have some background that doesn't look just so weird. It's just like this empty hall, like space. It just felt really, really ominous and dark.
And if you saw this live, you know what I'm talking about. The president posted a formal address last night announcing the operation and discussing the goals of the operation and some expectations about what will happen. And he announced it wearing no necktie, in a baseball cap that says USA, in front of a black curtain by himself. And without getting too much into this quite yet, because we will arrive there eventually, there is something particularly surreal when you measure and weigh the gravity of the situation and its significance for the United States. Obviously, the United States has been involved in the Middle East for a very long time, doing exactly this sort of thing. Regime change, proxy warfare, fighting terrorism ostensibly, deploying massive amounts of air, sea, and ground power. And the entire conceit of this MAGA movement of President Trump, the whole reason we're doing this, nominally, this was supposed to be in opposition to the Iraq War and to the legacy of the Iraq War and all of the other associated interventions. Now, we know that the same people that were behind the war in Iraq, they're the same people that have been beating the drum for war in Iran for just as much time. And they have tried to pressure many presidents into doing this, and they have moved the United States closer to a conflict like this. And so Trump, being the one who was supposed to challenge and oppose all of this, who repudiated it and created this successful political movement, now to be delivering for the same people, repudiating those people and their agenda, for him now to be serving them, delivering for them what they have wanted for so long. Number one on their wish list. It's actually disturbing. It's disturbing what it says about how our country works, whether we, the people, are still in control. Is this a government of, by, and for the people? Do elections matter? Does the popular will matter in our representative democracy, in our republic?
I gotta say, some of the things Trump said in the speech, too, were extremely off-putting, where he addressed the soldiers and he was like, some of you will die. And the way he said these things was very much, it was just so vacuous. There was really like nothing there. You'd think that if you're telling the nation, you're addressing the soldiers, they're turning on the TV, hearing what the president is saying, that you're going to use maybe a bit more formed language. You might use some vocabulary, try to be, try to express something a little more than just some of you will die, like some of you will be sacrificed. Okay. I don't know. That's a little dark, dude.
If we vote to repudiate a policy, a foreign interest group, a special interest group, repudiate a particular agenda, and we get that agenda anyway, that war, those people, regardless, what does that say about the political state, the actual true political reality of the United States of America? If anything, it just verifies what Trump said from the very beginning, which is that we are no longer in control. The people are no longer sovereign. And we knew that. That is something that we had always known and we had always suspected. This is confirmation. This is an illegitimate regime. The Constitution, representative democracy, our republic is effectively over. You can vote for a candidate that repudiates the global war on terror, the war in Iraq, regime change, someone that explicitly promises not to bring us into new conflicts. Someone that explicitly campaigns as the peace president, no new wars, and you'll get all of it anyway. We are in a state of distress. This is not a republic anymore. That's over. And the MAGA movement is surely, of course. But anyway, I digress. I watched the speech last night, very uncanny and disturbing and strange. And you need to listen to the speech because the speech lays out exactly what this is.
Oh, and it won't take long because it's very short. I think it clocked in at just over 9 minutes. Like, dude, what kind of declaration of war, grand declaration of war takes 9 minutes, dude? Like, I swear, that just goes to show the low effort. Like, they think that, like, the population will just see that and go, oh, that's fine. I guess some people, some Twitter slop consumers, people that line up at the trough every single day for their daily slop, they'll take it. I guess, they think it's fun. War is fun to them because they don't have to participate, I guess.
Trump talks about the entire history of U.S.-Iranian relations. He goes back to the 1979 Iranian hostage crisis, to the Beirut barracks bombing in 1983. He discussed Iran's use of IEDs and their backing of Shiite militias in Iraq. What is the purpose of all of this? What is the purpose of all of this history? Well, he is making the case, as they say. He is making the case, creating the pretext for a regime change war in Iran. And the message is simple. The Iranian regime, obviously Iran is going nowhere. The territory, the population, they're not going anywhere. But this regime, which was thrust into power during the revolution in 1979, Trump is making the case that they are an international pariah, a threat to the United States, an historic adversary of the United States, and therefore, that is why they have to go. So make no mistake about it, that rhetoric that he lays out in the beginning of the speech, that's a regime change speech. He is laying out the case. This is why the regime has to go. That's not a speech about nuclear weapons, missiles. It's not a speech about bringing them to the negotiating table. Obviously, that's a regime change speech. Further, he makes it even more explicit. He announced the targets of the strike. He said that the United States and Israel launched a joint operation targeting Iran's navy, its missile production facilities, and regime targets. He called upon the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the Iranian armed forces to lay down their arms or they would die. He then said that upon the conclusion of the operation, he invites the Iranian people to emerge from shelter and to take their country back.
That's not really happening right now. You have around 10 pretty crazy visuals coming out of Tehran. I was just on Twitter looking at this. There's a crowd of about 1 million people in Tehran right now. It's daylight over there. And they're watching Iranian ballistic missiles get launched. The crowd is all looking up at the sky. The imam is on the loudspeakers. The mosque is there. blaring like all this air, or I guess they're whatever language they're speaking. They're doing their prayers with like a million people, and they're watching the ballistic missiles go fly towards it, and they're cheering it on. It's absolutely unbelievable visuals.
He effectively said, I am giving you the opportunity. I am neutralizing the Iranian government and its military and the regime. And once we're finished, you will emerge and take back your country. And so every aspect of this speech is critical. He is making the case that the regime must be toppled, talking about destroying all of the regime's assets, killing all of their personnel, calling for a complete and total surrender. And in the end, after all that, calling upon the Iranian people to rise up, have a coup, and install a new regime. So again, make no mistake about it, we have entered into a regime change war. Now, why am I saying this? Why is this such an important thing to understand? We have been at war with Iran for decades. We have been in a state of war with Iran by every other means. We have assassinated their leaders. The Israelis have assassinated their scientists. With it, we have launched cyber attacks on their infrastructure, not just nuclear, but also other vital critical infrastructure. There has been espionage, industrial sabotage. We have gone to war with their proxies, like the Houthis in Yemen. We have launched strikes against their positions in other countries too. We have been in a state of war for a long time. But because the objectives of these other operations have been limited, people don't call it a war. They say these are operations to neutralize the nuclear program.
Yeah, what's crazy right now is Trump isn't calling it a war. No one around him is calling it a war. Democrats are, and a few Republicans like Thomas Massey, who is, I believe he's trying to bring it to a congressional vote this morning. So we'll see how that goes in a few hours. As I'm recording this, it's just 5:50 a.m. Eastern time. That what we can see is that the Iranian regime is still going right now.
Or this is meant to increase our leverage in negotiations. Or it's some form of a proxy war, and this is about rolling back their soft or hard influence across the region. Well, tonight, nobody can deny we are now engaged against Iran in a full-fledged regime change war. Now, what's more, as we discussed for the past couple of weeks, everybody suspected that we would eventually use this military power that is forward deployed against Iran. The question concerning that operation is what the goal of that would be and how it would be accomplished. Now, this matters very deeply because the kind of force that has been deployed into the region, as you have probably noticed, is a naval force and an air force. And that is the operation. It is a naval and an air operation. We have not invaded Iran. We have not put boots on the ground. We don't have special forces there. There has not been a major coalition invasion. We don't have people parachuting in. How this operation is being conducted is with missiles launched from ships and with air power. It is with our carriers, which bring the air power to the region. It is with bombers, which have been stationed in other countries. It is an air and sea campaign. Now, this creates a conundrum here because, again, if the goal is the maximalist objective, which is to topple the Iranian regime, we are going all the way. Again, it's not about degrading their capabilities. It's not about weakening them. If the goal is to exterminate the Iranian regime, we're going all the way and toppling them. It raises the question, how is that going to be done with air and sea power alone?
Like, are you going to get people in the streets of Iran to hold a revolution and overthrow the revolution? All right, because that's how they think of it. Because they think of it as the revolution is still in power over there because the revolution's happened since 1979. So you're going to have a revolution against the revolution. All right, and they're out in the streets too. Like, they're getting attacked brings out nationalism in people that they had no idea they even had in them, especially now that the Ayatollah is. People are legit out in the streets pissed off. They are crying, they're grieving. You have to keep in mind, this is not just the killing of a head of state, of essentially, the ruler. This is also the killing of the second largest branch of Islam. So the calls across mosques are going out, across the world, not just in the Middle East, but across the world. The calls at the mosques are going out that this jihad, this holy war, essentially has begun.
We now have the goal. We also now have the mode. We know what the Trump administration is seeking, and we know how they seek to achieve it. But the problem that is created is that historically, you cannot achieve a regime change through air and sea power alone. Why is that? Because although you can bomb civilian government facilities, you can bomb military facilities, you can destroy the Navy, you can destroy hardware, anti-aircraft systems. On the other side of all of the bombing, there are still going to be 200,000 Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps soldiers, and they will be armed. On the other side of this, you are still going to have, all in, about 1 million Iranian security personnel between the IRGC, the Iranian Armed Forces, and the internal security forces. You can decapitate, you can cut off the head of the snake, you can some or half or all of the regime. You can blow up all of their major weapon systems. But on the other side of the bombing campaign, there will be a country of 90 million people. And the only apparatus in place to control those people with the use of force that is organized into a hierarchy behind an ideology with some semblance of legitimacy, with experience, it's going to be the very same Iranian regime. This is the problem. Blow up their navy, destroy their missiles, decapitate the leadership. There's a chain of command. Other people will replace the leadership. And again, destroy the big weapons. The small weapons are still in the hands of the army.
Are we just going to keep killing the next supreme leader over and over again? Like, we already have 5 guys that they've named on the news. NBC was just reporting 5 different guys who are, one's the son of Khamenei, one's the son of Khomeini, who's the first supreme leader. There's a bunch of other guys, mainly clerics, like 3 other guys that are very well known throughout Iran. Are we just going to go through the leadership and just every single one of them, and there's not going to be any supreme leader? I guess it's a total regime change. How are you going to do that when they're literally under mountains? I don't know, dude. Definitely not with just air and sea power. You're going to have to send soldiers in at one point.
And unless you actually have an alternative invading force, whether that is a U.S. ground invasion, an invasion from a neighboring state, whether you have proxies from inside the country, sectarian groups, separatist groups, anti-government groups, unless there is an alternative force that is armed, that is numerous, that is organized, and is able to communicate, and unless that group has legitimacy and can earn the support of the country, well, all things considered, on the other side of the conflict, the most likely successor to the Iranian regime is the Iranian regime. It may not be the exact same people, but it will be the same security apparatus. And so this is the big conundrum here. We have deployed all the air and sea power. We've launched the operation. And by all appearances, we are winning this war. By all appearances. But appearances can be deceiving. If you watch the news, they report that there have been over 900 airstrikes, that the U.S. and Israel have air superiority in most of the country. We control the airspace. We have assassinated the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. We have assassinated some of the top military and civilian government leadership. We have probably, by the end of this, will have destroyed their entire Navy, all of their missiles, all of their missile production facilities, and so on. And this is the operation. It appears that we are winning. People are saying this is a great success. And they say that perhaps the American public and the world will get with the program and rally behind this when they see the outcome, when they see the effectiveness of it. But that is where we stand under 24 hours into the operation. Where will we be when the bombs stop dropping? Where will we be in a week? I want to get into this article from the Wall Street Journal. We'll just read through this and talk about some of the details. And we'll talk a little bit more about what has happened in the past 24 hours. Then we'll get into some of the timeline, how we got here, and then answering this question, where we're going. So this is from the Journal. It says, quote, President Trump and launched attacks on Iran with the ambitious aim of bringing down the regime in Tehran, a goal that promises heavy use of force and which will rattle Gulf allies concerned about a wider regional war and instability on their doorstep. U.S. and forces went hard at Iran beginning early Saturday, attacking Iran's leaders and symbols of the regime, in addition to military assets that Iran would need to fight a war. Heavy strikes were expected to continue for days. Strikes focused on high-value officials and Iran's missile capabilities, while the U.S. attacks went after military targets. In a speech posted on Truth Social, Trump said the strikes are weakening Iran's rulers and called on Iran's people to take the opening as a once-in-a-generation chance to topple the regime. He said, quote, when we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Don't let it pass.
As if we're just supposed to think that Donald Trump's life goal is just to free the people of Iran. Yeah, I just wanted to become president just so I could free the people of Iran. That's really what I've been working towards. Not freeing the people of America, freeing the people of Iran.
Now fighting for its survival, the Iranian regime launched a wave of missile attacks on U.S. military bases in some Gulf states, as well as on Iranian missiles are headed towards bases in Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates. They've also been launched against Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraqi Kurdistan, and U.S. officials haven't yet outlined a plan for who would take control of Iran in the event that the regime falls, or how to avoid a chaotic power struggle among factions within the Iranian regime and its divided opposition. So this is what you need to understand about the dynamic here. And this is very important. We have to understand the security situation between Iran and the United States. Has been principally concerned with Iran's nuclear program, its proxies, and its missiles. Now, more on this in a moment. We'll get back into this equation here. This war, unlike last year, is specifically focused on Iran's missiles.
Yeah, missiles make a big deal. It's a huge difference when you see the strikes on Dubai and at Bahrain, everywhere else where America, Jordan, and pretty much everywhere, Al Udeid Air Base, when you don't have an air force, like you're like a third world country, missiles are the equalizer. When you can't build an air force or your planes will just get shut down, well, you just build bigger and better missiles, right? Build more of them.
Last year, the U.S. and took out Iran's nuclear program. We destroyed their biggest centrifuge facilities. We apparently made their stockpile of highly enriched uranium inaccessible. Arguably, we set back the program several years, and we increased Iran's breakout time from when they might decide to make a nuclear weapon to when they acquire one, from weeks to possibly years. And so we neutralized that deterrent capability of Iran. In this war, we're going after their missile program. Iran has built thousands of ballistic missiles, which are being intercepted as we speak, but if launched in a surprise attack in large enough volleys, may not be able to be intercepted. And so this is the only military capability that Iran has to defend itself. Its air defenses, its air force, its navy are completely inferior to the United States and it. However, it is their mass production of cheap ballistic missiles, and they source components from China and Russia, and they're making hundreds of them all the time. It is this massive stockpile and capability to mass produce missiles which truly threatens in the United States. If and the United States engage in operations, and you're seeing it today, Iran can launch missiles, and not all of them, but a small percentage can actually strike at an American civilian or government sites. And this is the only capability that Iran has.
That and low-flying, low-speed drones, like the Shahed or the Shahed drones, however you pronounce them. Those fly very low, and they're very slow, and they're very, very cheap. And they send a bunch of them all at once. Those are these really like the propeller-driven ones that are landing in Dubai right now. Those ones are just so low, like low flying, typically like around 100 meters or so, that they just don't get detected by radar.
That's sort of their only resort if an America attack. So the purpose of this war, what Trump said specifically in the speech, is to destroy their capability to make missiles and destroy their missile stockpiles. Now, this gives us some clues here because, again, when you think about the kind of force that is deployed in the region and the goals, it doesn't work. We're bombing the big stuff, but in 4 days, in a week, in 2 weeks, when this is all over, who is at this point the most likely contender to take power? It's not going to be the Iranian people, because the Iranian people are not organized, they're not armed, they don't have backing from a superpower patron, or at the minimum, coordinating with them on the ground. Have to assume some of that is happening, but we haven't seen any real movement take hold, least of all in the protests last month. So the people cannot spontaneously get together and form a new government. If that's the case, then in a week or 2 weeks' time after the bombs start dropping, the only force that is even capable of picking up the pieces, of enforcing any semblance of order in the country, will be the same security apparatus as before. It's going to be the Revolutionary Guard. It's going to be the armed forces. It's going to be the Basij. Now, perhaps the Trump administration is counting on the survivors of this attack being more pliable. Very similar to Venezuela. What did Trump do in Venezuela? Well, he picked up Maduro, and the vice president, the second in command, just filled his spot. We didn't even necessarily destroy their entire military. We didn't destroy their armed forces. We killed about 100 palace guards, Cuban intelligence, and Venezuelan security forces, kidnapped Maduro in the hopes that the successor, who was a part of the same apparatus, would be more open to negotiating. And they see what happens to the president. They see what the United States is capable of, and they realize that you can't win this one. Your defensive capabilities will not work. You cannot inflict pain on the United States. It is utter domination. You are crushed. And so the choice of the vice president is you're either going to go the way of Maduro and die or be imprisoned, or you're going to find a way to work with the United States. And that's the model. And it is telling that these two operations have happened so close to one another. It was just not even 2 months ago that the United States pursued a faux regime change in Venezuela.
There's so many reasons why these two places just aren't comparable. Why Venezuela, it was, while the operation had a lot of things go right, there could have been a lot of things that gone wrong. In fact, one of the helicopter pilots, was severely wounded, could have died. So there was a lot of things that could have gone majorly wrong in the Venezuelan operation. Like, it wasn't like, oh, this is guaranteed to succeed or whatever, because, we're just like that good. It's like, no, dude, like a helicopter pilot almost died. These things are, these operations are very dangerous. How do you think, is the Iranian regime backing down now? No, they're digging their heels in. And why would they back down? They have no reason to. They're in a war.
Is it a true regime change? Well, the entire security apparatus remains in place. The Chavista government remains in place. It is Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's vice president, who now rules the country with the same defense minister, the same intelligence minister. So it's a decapitation without a regime change. It's a form of persuasion, aggressive negotiations, We took your leader and now we've left you with no options. Perhaps this is the formula in Iran. Decapitate the regime, kill the Ayatollah, kill the top IRGC commanders, make them vulnerable and defenseless, remove hope from the equation. Without a navy, without missiles, without their high-ranking security personnel, they must realize they are completely vulnerable. They are completely defenseless and completely open. Is that perhaps the calculation? That whoever, whether it's the second, third, fourth, fifth guy in the chain of command, whoever survives, when that person rises above, maybe it's some other faction or element in the security services.
Like I was just talking about this, the replacement for the supreme leader, the successor, is likely his son or the first guy's grandson. So no, you're not going to get a guy who is more willing to talk. You're going to get a guy as the supreme leader who you just his grandfather, or you just his, his father, so it's not like you're going to get like a friendly regime. If anything, they have the most incentive to fight.
Whoever survives and claims to speak for the remnant of the Iranian regime, maybe the Trump administration is counting on that person simply being willing to negotiate. And you leave the internal security apparatus in place. You don't go like you did in Iraq and put them all on trial and all of them and de-Baathify them, re-educate them and reintegrate them or something like that. But you simply swap out an obstinate leader with a more pliant leader, and you work on a new understanding where the Iranian regime can cooperate with the United States. Now, here are the problems with this way of thinking. Again, you're not going to remove an entrenched regime with air and sea power alone. The Trump administration knows that. The Department of War knows that. They know that if they really wanted to replace all these people, they would need a rival security service, political faction, and nothing of that sort exists. There are people that oppose the regime. There are other claimants to rule Iran, but none of them have the necessary support. None of them have the necessary organization or weapons. So it looks very unlikely that, again, any force other than a remnant of the Iranian security apparatus will rule afterward. And you have to expect that the Trump administration knows that. And so perhaps this is the expectation. They will pound Iran, hit them so hard, again, make them utterly defenseless so that there is not even the delusion, there is not even the myth that Iran is going to be striking a carrier with a hypersonic missile, that Iran is going to destroy with thousands of missiles in a huge volley. And they will have to come to terms and negotiate with the United States on our terms. Well, here's the problem with this way of thinking. Famously, Tucker Carlson challenged Ted Cruz, who was in favor of an operation like this, and said, how many people live in Iran? And Ted Cruz had no idea. And he dismissed that and said, that's trivia. That's a trivial detail. What does it matter how many people live there?
Oh my God, that was a crazy mask off moment. If you don't know how many people live in Iran, how can you say that you want to go to war with them? Yes, the population of a country matters quite a bit, actually, especially in a war. The population of a country is one of the determining factors of many aspects of a country, whether it be the economics, whether it be the military strength. A lot of different things come from what is your population.
Well, it actually matters quite a bit, because a country 3 times the size of Iraq with 90 million people and 1 million soldiers is not actually going to be subdued by bombs. What happens the day or the week after Iran's military is utterly destroyed? Well, probably chaos breaks out. Probably people are going to try to flee, and the borders are going to destabilize. Probably people are going to rush to the stores and try to stock up on essentials, which will cause the economy to effectively collapse. There will be looting. There will be chaos. There will be a lapse in critical infrastructure, public services. You're looking at the bottom falling out from the country, and that will actually create a vacuum. It will actually embolden and buttress the Iranian security force because there will be a need for order and only that force will be able to provide it.
Also, when you have a lot of people flee a country, that makes it easier to control the people that remain. All right, because if your population is bigger, they stand a bigger chance of standing up against the government. If there's just overall less people, then that means less people that the government has to keep tabs on, less people that they have to actively control. It makes their job easier.
What's more, here's the other problem with this. So Iran's security force is going to be there, attacking Iran, bombing all their cities, killing potentially hundreds, maybe thousands of civilians. What effect does that have on the resolve of Iranians and of the Iranian political leadership? If it's a remnant of the Iranian security forces, who is to say that these people, the survivors who just watched their friends, colleagues, leaders, spiritual figures get murdered in a war of aggression, who is to say those people are now going to roll over for the United States? Perhaps that works in Venezuela, a much smaller country in terms of territory and population, ruled over by corrupt people with
doesn't have crazy radical Islam. That's a major factor, dude, is that like Venezuela is just a Catholic country and people are mostly secular there. Dude, like that what we're talking about, the political Islam, dude, Tehran is really where that's where the rhetoric has been coming out for a long time. The Islamic world, Sunni Shia, they don't even care right now. You have to understand the Islamic world is going crazy right now over this. People don't even care about the sects anymore. They don't care about what branch at this point. They're seeing what's going on and they're like, well, this is a great holy war between religions.
No real ideology, not religious zealots, not even particularly nationalistic, maybe not even ideological anymore, but just plutocrats, just crony socialists or something. Maybe that works in Venezuela, where they're more worried about their personal enrichment or survival. But in Iran, a regime that is literally created by religious police, secret police, a vanguard revolutionary paramilitary with an eschatological opinion, an interpretation of their own country and its role in the future of the universe, who is to say that the remnant of that security service is not going to be more hardcore than what came before?
That's true. It's like the official line from Iran is that World War III is just the apocalypse, and we're going to participate in the apocalypse. Iran has a special part to play in the end of days, essentially, for religious reasons. So that this is not like Venezuela, where it's just like, well, we're just socialist, right? We're trying to create, this left-wing utopia. No, this is completely different, dude. They are like the government. People are like, yes, this is all according to the holy book's plans or the God's plan that, the world is going to end and Iran will play a part in this.
Who's to say that they will not be more emboldened and their resolve won't be hardened after the strikes? And maybe they don't negotiate then. So what happens the day after? Obviously, then this remnant, whether they're in favor or against the United States, they will seek to rebuild. Just as the Iranian regime after Midnight Hammer began to rebuild the nuclear infrastructure and their missile capability, you have to imagine that the remnant of the Iranian security forces is going to try to rebuild also. It may be a much taller order and basically impossible, but we have to entertain the scenario, maybe the most likely scenario, that hardliners come to power, they retain control of the country rather than an uprising of the people, and they go to work building more missiles and the military. So what does the United States do then? Do they allow Iran to keep going? Do they allow Iran to rebuild and reconstitute on a long enough timeline? Maybe not in months or weeks, but over the course of many years. Obviously not. This gets back to that security equation. What was stopping in the United States before from intervening in Iran? What was preventing us from doing this 10 years ago, 20 years ago? What prevented us from doing this is that we thought Iran was going to build a nuclear bomb. And if we invaded and if we tried to topple the regime, maybe before we were successful, they would have a nuclear bomb. And then they might use it. Then we're in trouble. Missiles, not a big deal. Nuclear bomb on top of a missile, that would pose a problem for Israel in the United States.
Yeah, and I think if the successors of the supreme leader don't pursue a nuclear weapon, then they're just dumb. I think the supreme leader is dumb. I think Ali Khamenei was stupid for not pursuing a nuclear weapon. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the now deceased supreme leader's Twitter. It's kind of wild that this guy was tweeting as much as he did and the stuff that he did. I mean, it's kind of brain rot stuff here and there. Really stupid tweets. He's tweeting about American politics, which is like it's kind of indicative. Like he was thinking about domestic American politics quite a bit and tweeting about it and stuff like Black Lives Matter, talking about like oppression in the United States a lot, like from a very leftist coded view. Obviously, he's like a third worldist, or was. But it really goes to show, it's like, what were you doing, Khomeini? Like tweeting all this time. I mean, the Twitter fingers were crazy, bro. And you weren't actually working on a nuke. If they haven't been working on a nuke, I'm sorry, but that's just dumb.
So that is a deterrent that prevented us from operating in Iranian territory. But it was also their ballistic missile program. Maybe the United States wasn't willing to go in, but always wanted to go into Iran. They were worried about the nuclear program, but they're also worried about the missiles, as you saw last year. When it forced our hand to intervene in Iran, it was that had to tap out. It was they that had to plead with Washington to intervene to bring an end to the conflict, because it was being bombarded with wave after wave of hundreds of Iranian ballistic missiles, drones, cruise missiles, and they were running out of interceptors to shoot them down. So why could it not intervene over Iran's skies? Because if they did, they would be bombarded with missiles and it would shut down their country. It's a very small country with not a lot of population centers, and it's hard to have commerce. It's hard to keep people there if your airports and your cities and residential buildings are being hit with hypersonic ballistic missiles. So it could not intervene unless the missiles were destroyed. Are you seeing where this is going? Now that Iran's nuclear hedge has been obliterated by Midnight Hammer last year and the operation today, now that its missile capacity has been severely degraded and its navy, which might be able to close the Strait of Hormuz, now Iran is truly defenseless. And what this does is it creates options for further engagement. So you might think this is the climax, this is the be-all, end-all, just as you might have thought the climax was last year. That this is it. This is the war to topple the regime. I don't think so. I think that when we look back in history, this will be characterized as yet another operation to degrade Iran's military capabilities, just like Midnight Hammer.
Yeah, like the objective of getting rid of the Iranian regime cannot be done without troops on the ground. Like, I can't stress that enough. I got to say it over and over again. The 40,000 troops that are stationed in various places in the periphery around in the region, that is not nearly as close. Dude, for Iraq, America had 300,000 soldiers invade, along with tanks, all sorts of stuff. 30 to 40, and that's that's 3 times, and Iran is 3 times the size, all right? And we have a force of 40,000 guys, give or take. That is not indicative of a ground force that is going to go into Iran anytime soon. That is very small. They would have to up that amount of troops to a gargantuan sum. You need almost 1 million men. You are going up against a 1 million man army. You probably need 1 million men.
Just like the other operations, just like the industrial sabotage, assassinating the scientists, just like all these other operations, this is about systematically defeating in detail Iran's military. so that we can open up a front against Iran in perpetuity. So in short, what happens when Iran's security force takes back control over the country, and maybe it's led by a hardliner, maybe it's led by another reformer? Well, if diplomacy fails, now in the United States, we can operate in Iran with impunity. If Iran doesn't play ball when this is over in 6 months, in a year, it costs us nothing to intervene. And this is the operational goal, which is to achieve the same situation in Iran as you had in Syria for 15 years. In the same way that it took control of Syria's skies and airspace and launched airstrikes constantly, degrading the Assad regime and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard there, seeks to open up the exact same front in Iran. This is not the end. This is actually just the beginning of a new chapter. This is another operational strike to further degrade Iran's military so that there can be future operations. And the ultimate goal is the regime change.
Yeah, there's all these groups within Iran that are being incentivized to destabilize the country. So we have Azeris, we have Kurds, there's Balochs, there's Sunnis, or Balochis, I should say, that the president of the United States and Benjamin Netanyahu, everyone is advocating for these groups to essentially, everyone should vie for control all at the same time. All of these people should rise up and try to claim the same thing. Everyone should try to claim the throne of Iran. That is just like the total recipe for disaster. That's how you know that it's completely malevolent, because you have Azeris in the north, Kurds in the west, Sunnis in the south and in the southeast, that they're all going to be fighting over the same thing.
The ultimate goal, I imagine, is to eventually create a situation, either at the end of this or some other operation in the future, where through CIA and Mossad backing, Shin Bet, whoever, they are going to back a liberal democratic force. They will back some rival claimant. They will eventually replace the Iranian regime, and then that Iranian regime will be subordinated to it in exactly the same way as has happened to Syria and to Iraq and to other countries. I think that is the ultimate goal. And that is the situation as it stands. I think that is what is happening today, and I think that is what will happen in the immediate future. Now, I want to talk about something very specific here.
All right, next video, guys.